The metallic taste of this truth lingers, a reminder that the stories we are told, then and now, are often just meticulously constructed narratives designed to justify power and subjugate the masses. What else are they lying about now? The wet sound of rotting thatch dripping outside is the only sound as a lone figure, cloaked in black, passes Greta's hut, his steps soft on the muddy path, carrying a small, leather-bound book. His shadow, briefly, falls across the window. Finn stirs, his eyes fluttering open, clear and calm. He reaches for you, a small, trusting hand. This tiny, vulnerable life, saved by a forbidden root and a brave woman, represents a profound truth. Humanity's innate drive for survival and knowledge cannot be fully extinguished, no matter how many books are burned, how many healers are condemned. The true darkness of the Middle Ages wasn't just the lack of light, but the deliberate shrouding of it. We are left with the chilling understanding that the battle for truth, for the right to know and to heal, is a timeless one. Yet a single papal decree, often forged or twisted from its original intent, could brand them demonic. We see echoes of this today in the deliberate spread of misinformation, the discrediting of inconvenient truths, the suppression of alternative solutions by powerful institutions. They don't want you to question their authority, whether it's over your soul or your health. They lied about Mandrake, saying it caused madness and death, to keep you from using effective, accessible remedies. They lied about the Black Death being God's punishment, rather than admitting the failings of their own unsanitary cities to maintain control through fear. By dictating what was holy and what was demonic, they stifled innovation, crushed dissent, and ensured the populace remained entirely dependent on their dogma. Imagine a world where the very institution promising salvation was actively preventing cures, not out of ignorance, but out of a calculated strategy to maintain absolute spiritual and temporal authority. This is the grim reality of the Middle Ages, a meticulously constructed lie. The forgotten wisdom of herbs, the quiet observations of village healers. These weren't primitive superstitions. Many were direct descendants of Roman and even earlier empirical medical practices, honed over centuries. The forbidden mandrake, despised by the church, had worked its silent miracle. But that miracle came at a cost, a debt owed not just to Greta, but to a hidden truth that gnaws at the edges of your perception. The church, in its divine wisdom, had decreed that illness was God's will, a punishment or a test. To interfere with God's plan through unnatural means was heresy. This wasn't merely about faith, it was about power. By controlling healing, they controlled life. The village bell tolls in the distance, a somber, rhythmic beat that suddenly feels less like a call to prayer and more like a warning. The air stills. The silence in old Greta's hut, once punctuated by Finn's shallow breaths, is now absolute, save for the frantic beat of your own heart. The greatest deception wasn't just the suppression of knowledge, but the meticulously crafted narrative that justified it, painting rebels as heretics and saviors as witches. Finn's fever broke hours ago, leaving him weak but alive, a faint flush replacing the deathly pallor of his skin. The wind outside howls, rattling the thatch roof, a sound like fingers scraping against rough stone. This quiet act of rebellion, this forbidden sip, is a direct challenge to the very foundation of their power. You are not just fighting for Finn's life. You are fighting for the right to choose, the right to knowledge, and someone, somewhere, always watches. Old Greta's gaze drifts to the dark window, her face etched with a deeper worry than even Finn's fever. Your child's life, balanced against the wrath of God, or more accurately, the wrath of men who claimed to speak for him. The church profited immensely from your suffering, from the fear of death, selling indulgences and miracle cures that did nothing but enrich their coffers. Their power was built on keeping you ignorant, on ensuring only their solutions were acceptable. Even if those solutions meant death, they controlled your life, your death, and your afterlife. A single drop of the dark concoction touches Finn's lips, then another. His small, frail hand grasps your finger, a sudden, desperate strength. The truth is, centuries of ancient herbal wisdom were intentionally purged by the church, deeming it witchcraft to centralize all healing and power within their domain, selling expensive, ineffective holy relics instead. You watch as Greta grinds the root, mixing it with honeyed wine. The metallic tang of fear pricks your tongue. This is defiance. This is heresy. If Finn lives, what then? If he dies, will they blame Greta? Will they blame you for seeking her forbidden aid? Imagine the desperate hope, the agonizing choice. She gestures to a dark, dried root, its surface rough like old bark. They say this is of the devil. They say it kills. But they lie. It draws the fever. It cleanses the blood. It has saved countless, hidden in the shadows. This root, the mandrake, was anathema to the church, its use punishable by scourging, sometimes even the pyre. 99% of people believe medieval medicine was solely bloodletting and superstition. Forbidden things. Her hut, tucked away where the forest began to reclaim the fields, always smelled of damp earth and strange, pungent herbs. The air inside hums with the low thrum of her murmuring incantations, more to herself than to any god. Greta holds a gnarled hand over Finn's forehead, her eyes like chipped amber, scanning your desperate face. She speaks in whispers, the dry rustle of herbs hanging above your heads, the only other sound. The father speaks of demons. I speak of imbalance. His blood is sour, his spirit weak. What they don't want you to know is that some medieval healers discovered cures for ailments that baffled the learned monks. Knowledge systematically suppressed because it threatened absolute control. You are Ilara, and the rasping cough of your youngest, 3-year-old Finn, tears at your gut more than any hunger pain. His skin is hot and dry, his breath shallow, a sickness clinging to him like river mud. The village priest, Father Alaric, had offered only prayers and blessed water, his words hollow against the reality of Finn's fading life. But old Greta, the wise woman, she knew things. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The thing in the well wasn't supposed to be human, and yet the faint, sweet scent of thyme and feverfew clung to its rotting shroud. We're about to peel back the layers of a carefully constructed lie, one that defined an entire era and continues to echo in whispers today. What if the very foundations of medieval life, from the food you ate to the prayers you recited, were engineered to keep you in the dark? What if the institutions sworn to protect you were in fact the architects of your suffering. The answers are hidden in plain sight, if you know where to look. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. But the truth will keep you awake tonight. It wasn't just the plague, or famine, or the bite of winter. It was something far more insidious, something meticulously designed to control, to subjugate, to erase hope before it could even bloom. Imagine for a moment being 12 years old, and this is your reality. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where belief is weaponized and fear is the most potent currency. The candle gutters. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights, but none quite like this. You clutch a rough woolen blanket tighter, the chill seeping into your bones, not just from the damp stone, but from the metallic taste of a truth you're only just beginning to swallow. The air, thick with the smell of wood smoke and unwashed bodies, tells its own story. One of constant struggle, of a life held captive by forces unseen and unspoken. 99% of people think they know how medieval children died. And some buried cities refuse to stay silent. If your skin prickles with the chill of forgotten secrets, if you crave deeply immersive real storytelling about survival, belief, and lives obliterated by decree, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know to bring these buried truths to light. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287, in a city destined to disappear. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. This is the forbidden truth of ghost cities, systematically wiped from maps and memory. Their very existence a threat to a political or religious agenda. Historians for centuries have refused to discuss them, building new narratives atop buried streets, literally paving over inconvenient truths. It's a chilling echo of our own world, where urban renewal and gentrification silence marginalized communities, systematically erasing their history and culture. What else, you wonder, lies forgotten beneath your feet? What other stories have they buried? You shiver, not from the raw cold, but from the metallic tang of unspoken fear on your tongue, from the unsettling quiet that swallows all sound. Below your feet, just inches beneath the soil, a vibrant city lies entombed. A conspiracy of silence, stretching back centuries, has buried this truth deeper than any foundation stone. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But this isn't the Middle Ages they want you to remember. What if entire medieval cities, teeming with life and legend, didn't just crumble to dust, but were deliberately erased from existence? What if 99% of what you've been taught about the Middle Ages is a meticulously crafted lie, the inconvenient truths literally paved over, their memory forbidden? The biting wind screams over a barren field where thousands once lived, loved, and died. It whistles a mournful tune through the empty air, tasting of damp earth, ancient secrets, and the ghost of forgotten joy. It is the story of those who chose to starve rather than surrender, to conspire rather than comply, ensuring that even in the darkest ages, the flame of human dignity, however small, was never truly extinguished. What other untold stories lie buried beneath the layers of official history, waiting to be unearthed? You see the wisdom in their eyes, the scars on their hands, and the unshakable resolve in their souls. They are gone now, reduced to dust and forgotten names, yet their legacy lives on, a silent testament to the enduring power of the oppressed. Their story is a haunting mirror to our own, reminding us that true history isn't found in the victor's boasts, but in the hidden acts of courage whispered between shadows. The failure of medieval peasant revolts was often a deliberate misdirection, a public spectacle designed to hide the slow, grinding success of countless smaller, unseen victories. It was about denying the oppressor not just freedom, but the very resources he sought to extract. We see the echoes of this ancient struggle in every modern fight against overwhelming power, in every marginalized community finding their voice. The last embers of the fire glow, painting the rough faces of the resistance leaders in a chiaroscuro of hope and despair. The secrets of the well-keepers, a forbidden society, were finally unearthed in the crumbling archives of an obscure monastic order in 2021, revealing intricate codes, secret meeting places, and sophisticated strategies for disrupting the feudal system. They didn't aim to overthrow castles in a day, but to make the Lord's life unlivable, grain by grain, and coin by coin. What these forbidden truths teach us is that the human spirit, when pushed to its limits, doesn't break, it adapts, innovates, and builds networks of resistance that official narratives deliberately ignore. And tonight, under the cloak of deepest darkness, the next act of quiet defiance will begin, with a single, carefully placed torch and the wet sound of rotting thatch. The whisper spoke of a web, not of individual acts, but of a vast, unseen architecture of defiance that stretched across entire regions, invisible to the Lord's watchmen. They buried the truth. These were not isolated incidents of desperation, but a calculated, intergenerational war of attrition. It is a cost paid in fear, in blood, and in the enduring whispered hope that one day the hidden axe will lead to an open dawn. The Lord's steward has announced a new, impossible tax on the winter grain, due by Michaelmas. He doesn't know that the well supplying the manor's kitchens has already been subtly diverted, its flow slowing, turning brackish. He doesn't know that the seeds sown in his fields are not what they seem. Everyone freezes, breath held. Is it a deer? Or is it one of the Lord's patrols, their hounds sniffing out the scent of sedition? Ilara quickly buries the paste, covering the disturbed earth with practiced ease. The stakes are everything. Your life, your family's lives, the slim hope of a future where your children might not starve. As the silence stretches, broken only by the frantic beat of your heart, you realize the true cost of their defiance. These acts, often resulting in swift, brutal retribution if discovered, a public hanging, a severed hand, highlight the desperate emotional stakes of resisting overwhelming power. You understand that this parallels modern grassroots movements and cyber activism, where the marginalized find new ways to challenge overwhelming power, keeping the flame of rebellion alive. A farmer, in the 13th century, whispering the location of a weak levee to a trusted ally, is no different from a modern activist sharing encrypted plans for a digital protest. The tools change, but the defiant spirit remains the same, a rustle in the undergrowth. Imagine the tense silence before a planned uprising, not with pitchforks, but with spores. You watch a fellow conspirator, Elara, carefully mixing a paste of crushed nightshade berries and a certain fungus, a recipe known only to a few. Her hands, calloused from a lifetime of labor, move with the delicacy of a surgeon. This isn't magic. It's suppressed botanical science, honed over centuries, now aimed directly at the Lord's coffers. The sweet, sickly smell of the mixture hangs in the air, a silent promise of destruction. They knew the signs of disease in livestock, the specific moisture levels needed for a successful crop, the exact moment a river might be diverted, and they weaponized it. What they don't want you to know is that these accidents, the sudden blight that swept through the Lord's grain, the mysteriously poisoned well that only affected the garrison, the strategic fire that destroyed a tithe barn full of grain, were not acts of God. They were meticulously planned, executed with an almost surgical precision, each act a tiny tremor in the foundation of tyranny. They tax us for the harvest, but they don't know the soil, he whispers, his voice barely audible over the thump of your own heart. This year, the blight begins in their fields first. This is the hidden truth. While official histories dismiss revolts as disorganized failures, they bury the true genius of these common folk. They had spies in the manor, disguised as stable boys and kitchen maids, reporting on the Lord's harvest plans, his weak points. The medieval peasant, dismissed as ignorant, was a master of their land. The wet sound of rotting thatch dripping somewhere nearby is the only sound apart from the rustle of your wool tunic. In the center, a man called Tomas, his face etched with worry lines, unfolds a scrap of parchment. It's not a map, not a declaration, but a crude drawing of a crop rotation, marked with symbols only you and a few others understand. This is forbidden knowledge, agricultural wisdom passed down from generations, now twisted for defiance. The secret wasn't in the sword, but in the seed. 99% of people never learned this. The true power of medieval peasant resistance lay not in open rebellion, which was suicide, but in the subtle, pervasive art of ecological warfare. Beneath the Lord's heavy hand, communities formed sophisticated, secret societies, not just for survival, but for clandestine acts of sabotage that gnawed at the very foundations of feudal power. You are huddled in the deepest part of the forest, the air still and cold enough to prickle your skin. The central mystery isn't if they resisted, but how they built a counterculture of defiance right under the watchful, cruel eyes of their oppressors. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. You believe demons live in fog, and your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where survival isn't a right, but a daily, brutal negotiation. Here, the true power isn't always in the Lord's castle, but in the shared, desperate silence of a huddled few. They don't want you to know how deep this resistance ran, how organized these secret societies became, bound by oaths whispered over stolen bread and the shared terror of the gibbet. The real story isn't of sheep, but of wolves hiding in plain sight, planning their next move. The air is thick with the metallic taste of fear, mingling with the earthy scent of damp straw and unwashed bodies. You hear the rhythmic scrape of fingernails against rough stone as a nervous hand traces an unseen symbol, a silent prayer. Outside, the wind howls, a phantom wail that could be a wolf or perhaps the ghost of a hanged man. This isn't the past they teach you in dusty books. This is the reality where every breath is a gamble, every glance a potential betrayal. You've never seen a toothbrush. 99% of people think they know how medieval peasants lived and died. They tell you revolts were chaotic, disorganized failures, swiftly crushed. They buried this truth under layers of punitive laws and propaganda, desperate to erase the memory of what truly happened. But the secret that changed everything, the true depth of their resistance, lies waiting just beneath the surface, whispering from the soil itself. The candle gutters, a lone flame fighting the encroaching gloom. Your shadow dances against cold stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights. 1,000 hushed whispers. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. This wasn't just poverty. It was a carefully constructed cage, designed to enrich the powerful while you watched your future wither with every unfair transaction. How did they hide it? Why is this story almost erased from our history? And what dark echoes does it still cast into our own world? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where survival is a daily negotiation and every coin in your hand feels lighter than it should. The secret buried beneath layers of intricate feudal contracts and cryptic tithe laws reveals a truth so shocking it rivals any conspiracy. An entire economic system meticulously engineered, not just for power, but for perpetual, inescapable debt for those like you. From the silver shaved from coinage to the exorbitant usury penalties that were just interest in disguise, the church and the nobility perfected a potent weapon. You pull the threadbare blanket tighter, but it's the gnawing ache in your stomach, not the cold, that truly keeps you awake. Outside, the wind whispers through bare branches, a sound that always brings the hollow clink of the Lord's freshly minted, debased coins to mind. You smell the faint, metallic tang of fear, mixed with the damp earth of the floor and the lingering smoke of the day's meager fire. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. What they don't want you to know about medieval wealth isn't about kings or castles, but about a silent, systemic theft that haunted every flicker of a peasant's hearth. 99% of history books skip over the meticulous, cruel design of a financial prison built to last for generations. The truth is, a secret, sinister machinery hummed beneath the fields, designed to steal more than just their harvest. The chill bites deep tonight, seeping through the gaps in your hovel's wattle and daub walls. The forged document, its vellum now brittle with age, still exists, a silent, haunting testament to a world built on intentional deceit. It reminds us that truth is often buried deepest, not under earth, but under layers of belief, carefully cultivated and fiercely defended. Some secrets, once revealed, demand a reevaluation of everything you thought you knew. This discovery didn't just expose a medieval fraud, it ignited a firestorm, challenging the very foundation of established authority, resonating deeply with the spirit of the Reformation and foreshadowing the modern struggle for historical truth. And as you stand here, in the quiet aftermath of this revelation, consider the faint, ghostly echo of that scribe's quill across the centuries. It whispers a profound question into the modern world. What other foundational narratives, accepted without question, might be subtle historical fabrications, still shaping our beliefs, our politics, our understanding of power today? With painstaking linguistic analysis, he revealed the shocking truth. The Latin used in the donation was simply not the Latin of Constantine's 4th century. It was anachronistic, filled with words and phrases that belonged to a much later age. The grand edifice of papal temporal power, built on a meticulously crafted lie, began to crack. His work, a testament to intellectual courage, echoed the quiet scratching of a quill many centuries before, but with an entirely different purpose: to illuminate, not to deceive. What these forbidden truths teach us, then, is not just about a specific medieval deception, but about the enduring human capacity for belief, the potent authority of the written word, and the chilling power of narrative itself. For 1,000 years, a single well-placed forgery rerouted the course of history, demonstrating how easily our perception of the past can be manipulated to serve the ambitions of the powerful. It wasn't until the 15th century that a brilliant Italian humanist, Lorenzo Valla, dared to challenge the document. It now holds a secret that will dictate the very destiny of Europe. Will anyone ever expose the truth of its birth? The lie, born in the cold silence of a monastic cell, persisted not for years, but for centuries. The donation of Constantine became a cornerstone of papal authority, cited in countless documents, used to crown emperors and justify vast land claims, shaping the political and religious landscape of Europe with an iron fist. Kings bowed before its supposed ancient decree, and millions believed in its divine origin. This was their fake news, meticulously crafted, utterly devastating in its long-term impact. You are not just writing words, you are drawing the borders of future kingdoms, dictating the fates of emperors and popes for 1,000 years. The flickering light casts shadows across the carefully applied lead seal, pressing the papal bull into the warm wax. A bell tolls, distant, muffled by the thick stone walls. It signifies the approach of dawn, the end of your solitary work, and the beginning of a magnificent, centuries-long lie. The parchment, still faintly damp, is rolled, tied with a simple ribbon. The metallic taste of fear, sharp and acrid, coats your tongue. One wrong stroke, one anachronistic phrase, and this fragile edifice of power could crumble. But the reward, the necessity, outweighs the sin. The Holy Father needs land, an army, unshakable authority to stand against the encroaching Lombards, to assert spiritual primacy over the distant Eastern Empire. This isn't merely a claim, it's a lifeline, a divine justification for earthly power. Just like today, where narratives are spun to shape elections or justify wars, medieval power brokers understood that controlling the past meant owning the future. Tonight, you are a cog in that vast, silent machine. The parchment beneath your hand isn't just vellum, it's a canvas for empire. You meticulously replicate the script of an earlier century, using inks mixed with ancient pigments, ensuring the deliberate imperfections, the aged hue, the subtle scent of time that will convince generations this document is legitimate. Your task, to compose a decree, supposedly from the Emperor Constantine himself, granting Pope Sylvester I and his successors dominion not just over the Church, but over Rome, Italy, and indeed all the western provinces of the Roman Empire. A bead of sweat, cold as a winter dewdrop, traces a path down your temple, despite the biting air. This isn't copying. This is creation. This is the weight of history being rewritten by your own trembling hand. You're crafting a lie, a magnificent, world-altering deception known centuries later as the donation of Constantine. 99% of people today assume the Church's immense wealth and temporal power grew organically from faith, from the sheer devotion of the masses. They never learn the darker truth, that much of it was secured through a calculated, systematic campaign of historical fabrication. What they don't want you to know is that some of the most divine decrees were born in shadows, not from heaven. You are Brother Gerbert, hunched over a heavy wooden desk in the deepest hours before matins, the chill of the scriptorium biting at your exposed fingers. A single tallow candle, its flame a nervous tremor, casts dancing giants from the towering shelves of forbidden texts and ancient chronicles. The only sounds are the distant hoot of an owl echoing through the cloister, and the relentless, rhythmic scratch, scratch, scratch of your goose quill across the stretched calfskin parchment. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The crisp sound of a quill, scratching out a future that never was. What if the very foundations of power, land, law, and the spiritual authority that swayed millions were meticulously crafted fictions, forged documents designed to rewrite the past and seize the future? 99% of people today look at the grandeur of medieval cathedrals and never once suspect that some of the most influential papal decrees, the very documents establishing the Church's temporal power, were outright fabrications. A subtle inconsistency, a linguistic anomaly in an ancient text, holds the key. The secret is closer than you think, waiting within the crisp, dry rustle of parchment. Your breath plumes in the flickering light, a silent testament to the chill that seeps into your bones and into the very fabric of history. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But what if the greatest deception of this age was hiding in plain sight, controlling your fate, written not by God, but by desperate men? The candle gutters. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights. But tonight, the secret you're about to uncover will leave you questioning everything. They built a lie so grand, it shaped kingdoms and crushed dissent. You're about to unearth the proof, buried not in forgotten tombs, but within the very sacred texts meant to bind souls. The air is cold, damp, carrying the scent of mildewed vellum and ancient dust. The haunting image of Alara, her eyes finding a flicker of peace in the dim light of a forbidden comfort, remains. What other profound truths has history buried from us, only to resurface when we dare to look beyond the official narratives? Explore the lost wisdom in our other episodes. And in doing so, They cast a long shadow, a shadow that still lingers over the way we understand and treat the most vulnerable parts of ourselves. The church burned the healers and their knowledge, but they could not burn the enduring human need for understanding, for a gentle hand in the face of despair. They thought they had buried the truth forever, but sometimes a single seed, carried on the wind of time, finds fertile ground, pushing through the hard earth of forgotten history to bloom anew. And now, you know, the gentle voice offering solace, the plant-based sedatives, the therapeutic touch. These techniques, so eerily similar to modern psychology, were not merely dismissed as superstition. They were actively eradicated. The silence that followed was not merely the absence of these practices, but the profound silence of untold suffering, of minds that could have been healed, now forever lost to the darkness. The church sought not just to heal the soul, but to control the mind. You are a stark reminder of what happens when forbidden knowledge, when empathy, challenges the established order. This tragic pattern, this suppression of holistic understanding in favor of institutional control, echoes through the centuries. Look around you now. How often are alternative treatments, gentle approaches to mental health, marginalized by established medical and pharmaceutical complexes, deemed unscientific or unproven simply because they threaten profitable systems? This is the ghost of medieval persecution, whispering in the halls of modern power. This systematic hunt for those who practiced alternative medicine, often women, was a calculated campaign, not just against heresy, but against any independent knowledge that could empower the common person. The true conspiracy here was the consolidation of power, spiritual and medical, into the hands of a select few. The villagers stir, their doors creaking open, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity as they witness your public humiliation. You are a warning, a living testament to the dangers of questioning the church's authority, to daring to seek comfort outside its prescribed boundaries. 99% of history books will tell you of crusades and castles, but they often omit these intimate battles for the very soul of human understanding. Father Alaric strides beside you, his presence a palpable weight of righteous fury. He bellows orders, sending the guards to apprehend the witch, the wise woman, the folk healer. You know her name. Ilara's mother knows her name. It's only a matter of time. You feel the crushing certainty of her capture. The inevitable accusation, the terrifying judgment. And the chill of the dawn cuts through your worn tunic as you are dragged from the chapel, the rough hands of the guards never loosening their grip. You stumble, your eyes blinking against the pale light of the rising sun, which paints the village in a deceptively serene glow. The air is still, save for the distant crow of a rooster, a sound that mocks your newfound terror. You have witnessed the truth of medieval healing, seen its potential, felt its forbidden comfort. But now, you face the crushing power of its suppression. You are proof that some in the Middle Ages dared to offer a different path, to mend shattered minds with gentle touch and listening ears. But the price for such forbidden wisdom was always steep. The guards push you roughly, dragging you from the cell, the cries of Ilara, now reawakened and terrified, echoing behind you. You have been caught. The question now is, what will become of the healer, and what will become of the truth? The world spins as strong hands seize you, dragging you from your hiding place. You gasp for air, the rough fabric of your tunic biting into your skin as you're hauled upright. Your eyes meet Alaric's, and in them, you see not just anger, but a cold, calculated triumph. The secret that changed everything, the understanding that healing could come from empathy and nature, not just penance and prayer, was now exposed. This is the moment the Church always feared: direct competition to their spiritual monopoly, a demonstration that true healing could flourish outside their iron grip. Someone brought solace to Ilara, not through holy rites, but through the earth's forbidden wisdom. This wasn't just a challenge to his authority. It was a perceived sacrilege, a direct insult to God as he understood him. This historical fact shatters the assumption that all medieval justice was blind. Sometimes it was chillingly precise in its pursuit of perceived heresy. As he stands, his eyes sweep upward, towards the source of the lavender's faint lingering, towards the shadows where you cower. He knows you are here. He gestures to the guards, their movements quick and brutal. Alaric steps closer, his boots scraping against the stone. You can hear the heavy, rhythmic thud of your own pulse in your ears, a deafening drumbeat. He kneels near Ilara, not in prayer, but to sniff the air, his nose twitching. He discovers the small, empty wooden cup you'd been unable to retrieve, its scent a clear testament to its contents. His face hardens, a grim certainty settling in his features. "Witchcraft," he hisses, the word a venomous curse in the quiet cell. A foul draft. He understands now. You can feel the heat of his gaze, imagining it burning through the darkness, finding your hidden form. The subtle scent, a remnant from the healer's cottage, a fragrant whisper of forbidden comfort, now acts as a beacon for suspicion. Your muscles tense, ready to flee or fight, though you know resistance is futile against two armed guards and the unwavering authority of the Church. 99% of the historical records of the time omit these minute human moments, the razor's edge between discovery and escape. But these were the lived realities of those who dared to defy. He eyes the very spot where you knelt, a single telltale drop of spilled poppy brew shimmering faintly in the torchlight. The door begins to swing shut, but a sudden, chilling realization flickers across his face. He raises a hand, halting the guards. "Wait," he commands, his voice low. "I smell lavender." Lavender. The word hangs in the stale air like a death sentence. Father Alaric's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scan the cell again, no longer casual, but piercing. Any alternative, especially one that succeeded where their rituals failed, undermined their authority, their tithes, their very hold over the minds of the people. This suppression of empathetic, holistic healing wasn't born of ignorance, but of a calculated effort to maintain power. It mirrors how modern institutions often marginalize non-pharmacological approaches, not always for scientific reasons, but sometimes to protect established interests and economic models. As Father Alaric turns to leave, his gaze lingers on the floor near where you're hidden. Your breath catches. You can feel the rough texture of the wall against your cheek, the cold sweat trickling down your back. He enters, his gaze sweeping the cell, missing the small, carefully hidden cup and the subtle change in Ilara's breathing. He sees only a mad woman, now blessedly asleep. He sees a problem temporarily contained, not a soul on the verge of healing. His true motivation, what they don't want you to know, was less about divine mandate and more about control. The church needed to be the sole arbiter of suffering, the only path to solace. This wasn't just about saving a soul. It was about protecting a secret, an ancient wisdom that the church deemed a heresy worthy of the pyre. A sliver of torchlight spears through the door's crack as the heavy oak swings inward with a groan. Father Alaric stands framed in the opening, his face a mask of suspicion, his eyes scanning the shadowed cell. Beside him, two burly guards, their weapons glinting, add to the ominous tableau. You press yourself against the cold stone, holding your breath, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. You instinctively douse your lamp, plunging the chamber into near-total darkness, leaving only the faint, sickly glow of the moon seeping through the high, narrow window. The clatter of keys, harsh and resonant in the suffocating silence, feels like a death knell. Ilara stirs, a soft moan escaping her lips, threatening to betray your presence. 99% of medieval narratives focus on grand battles and kings, but the true drama often unfolded in these quiet, desperate moments of defiance against overwhelming power. But just as a fragile peace settles in the cell, you hear it, the distinct shuffle of heavy boots in the corridor outside. A shadow falls across the door, not from your lamp, but from a sudden, sharp light piercing through the small barred window. The metallic scent of fear returns, sharper this time. The forbidden comfort you brought her could now cost you both everything. The heavy footsteps halt outside the cell, plunging the fragile piece into immediate peril. Her eyes, still haunted, start to focus, just a fraction, on yours. The church insisted on an external solution, an exorcist, a penance. But the folk healers understood that healing often comes from within, by giving voice to the voiceless parts of the soul. This profound insight, this secret understanding, was actively suppressed because it empowered the individual, undermining the very authority of the church. What power would a priest hold if a simple village woman could truly heal with touch and words? Ilara finally closes her eyes, a soft sigh escaping her lips. This simple human connection, dismissed as witchcraft, offered more solace than 1,000 exorcisms. It's a direct challenge to the idea that mental distress is a spiritual failing, instead seeing it as a human struggle requiring empathy. You begin to whisper, not about devils, but about the wind in the fields, the warmth of the sun, the quiet hum of a distant lullaby. You encourage her to speak her song, to untangle the whispers in her mind. As the sedative slowly takes hold, her frantic tremors begin to subside. Her voice, when it comes, is a dry, cracked rasp. Demons, they sing! You hold out the small wooden cup, the poppy-infused brew, releasing a faint, sweet aroma into the foul air. The healer's instructions echo in your mind. Speak to her softly, as if to a frightened child. Listen to her song. This is the forgotten art of talk therapy, a concept so foreign to the medieval church's dogma, yet eerily familiar to modern psychology. The gentle, rhythmic stroke of your hand on her forehead, an act of therapeutic touch, a forbidden comfort. The flicker of your concealed lamp casts monstrous shadows that dance across the rough-hewn stone, making the tiny chamber feel vast and terrifying. This is the truth of medieval imprisonment, not just physical confinement, but the slow, crushing torment of sensory deprivation and despair. 99% of people don't realize that for many, the treatment for madness was itself a form of torture, exacerbating the very conditions it claimed to cure. You kneel, the cold seeping through your worn breeches, and gently call her name. Ilara flinches, her eyes wide and unfocused, darting towards you like a trapped bird. You reach the cell door, your hand trembling as it finds the cold iron latch, the slightest clink, echoing like thunder in the suffocating silence. The iron latch gives way with a soft, chilling clink. The air in Ilara's cell is a stagnant, heavy blanket, smelling of fear and neglect. You can taste the dust, the damp earth, and the faint, metallic tang of the chain that binds her. She lies curled, almost fetal, in a corner, her breath a shallow, ragged whisper. This desperate act of defiance, a simple mother trying to save her child from a fate worse than death, is a story 99% of people never learn. It reveals the true courage of those who defied the established order, risking everything for a flicker of hope. As you slip into the chapel's side door, the heavy oak groaning like a sleeping beast, you wonder, how many others have performed such quiet rebellions, leaving no trace in the official histories? The Church's grip on sanity was absolute, ensuring that suffering minds found no comfort outside its rigid doctrine. You are that shadow, feeling the cold, wet mud squelch beneath your worn boots, the frantic thudding of your heart against your ribs as you creep towards the chapel. A small pouch, concealed within your tunic, holds the healer's forbidden concoction. You know the risks. Discovery means not just death, but eternal damnation, a chilling thought that feels more real than any hunger pang. Yet, the image of Ilara's vacant eyes, the raw sores on her wrists, compels you forward. She's preparing a soporific, a gentle draught to ease the tempest within Ilara's mind, a technique strikingly similar to modern sedatives. But unlike the modern pharmaceutical, this blend whispers to the body, coaxing it towards peace, not forcing it into submission. This plant-based wisdom was systematically dismantled, demonized, its practitioners burned at the stake to clear the path for remedies that could be controlled, taxed, and ultimately dictated by the powerful. The following night, a shadow moves through the village under the cloak of deepest dark. You feel the warmth of the fire on your face as you watch her crush dried poppy seeds in a stone mortar. The soft thump, 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 a hypnotic rhythm against the silence of the night. Her hands, gnarled with age, move with a practiced grace. 99% of modern accounts gloss over this, but these folk healers possessed an intricate knowledge of botanical medicine, far surpassing the crude purges and bloodletting of academic physicians. She murmurs, not to you, but to the spirits of the plants, a quiet conversation that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. This ancient wisdom, passed down through generations of women, was a direct threat to the Church's dominion over the very souls of the populace. They feared not just the loss of spiritual authority, but the loss of control over the human psyche itself. Ilara's salvation lay not in holy water, but in the forbidden knowledge of the earth and the human spirit. But how could this solace reach her, bound and watched by the very power that sought to suppress it? The air in the healer's cottage is thick with the scent of dried lavender and something earthy, comforting. And to her, one moonless night, a desperate mother brought word of Ilara. You can almost hear the soft rustle of dry leaves under the mother's furtive steps, the desperate plea in her hushed voice. Modern history dismisses these healers as charlatans, yet their methods, deemed heretical, often mirrored practices we revere today. Imagine the quiet understanding in the healer's eyes, a stark contrast to the priest's fiery condemnation. She understood that sometimes the mind shattered not from a demon's touch, but from a broken heart, a starved spirit. What they don't want you to know is that 99% of these possessions were not spiritual battles, but battles within the mind, often brought on by grief, trauma, or the sheer brutal despair of medieval life. The Church preached only one truth: the soul was the battleground of God and the devil. But in the shadowed alleys and deep woods, where the Church's reach thinned, another truth endured. They called her a cunning woman, a wise woman, or more often, a witch. She lived on the fringes, her cottage smelling of strange herbs and wood smoke, not incense. Exorcism chants that filled the small chapel with a booming terror. And then, when those failed, the heavy iron chain that bound her to the cold, unforgiving stone. You feel the rasp of her raw skin against the rough wool, the drip, drip, drip of water seeping through ancient mortar just inches from your ear, a monotonous rhythm that could drive anyone to the edge of reason. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. They called her possessed, chaining her in the dark. But the whispers she heard were not of demons, but of a forbidden comfort. Ilara, no more than 20 summers, huddled in the damp cell, the metallic taste of fear coating her tongue. Her fingers, raw from endless scratching, twitched against the coarse wool of her tunic. For weeks, the village priest, Father Alaric, had proclaimed her affliction a demonic infestation. His remedies? Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But beneath the fear, beneath the dogma, there were whispers. Whispers of a different kind of healing, a forbidden solace. This secret could have changed everything, but it was buried. Now we unearth it. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most. Or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. The Church buried this secret for 800 years, dismissing it as superstition. But 99% of what you think you know about medieval madness is a carefully constructed lie. The candle gutters. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights. The air, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and damp earth, chills you to the bone. Somewhere in the dark, a rat squeaks, its tiny claws scraping against rough stone. A sound that echoes the frantic beat of your own heart. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. And once you see what lies beneath, you can never unsee it. This is how empires rise, by building new narratives on the bones of the old, much like modern urban developers pave over sacred sites today. What lies hidden beneath your city? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. New archaeological evidence, unearthed in secret digs beneath Europe's most revered cathedrals, proves this wasn't an isolated incident. This was a systematic campaign, a scorched earth policy, not against land, but against memory and spirituality. What they don't want you to know is that your conversion wasn't just a choice, it was often an erasure. Imagine the desperate, whispered rituals that once took place here. Rituals deemed so dangerous, so potent, that the rising power of Christianity had to bury them alive, stacking stone upon stone, not just to build a church, but to forget a truth. Your breath plumes in the weak, flickering light of a single tallow candle, casting dancing shadows across crude stone walls, walls that predate the grand arches above by centuries. Here, deep beneath the consecrated floor, you see it, a pre-Christian altar, crude and ancient, deliberately defaced but undeniable. It's desecrated, yes, but undeniably there, a defiant whisper from a silenced past. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But this isn't the Middle Ages they taught you about in school. 99% of people who step into the hallowed silence of a medieval cathedral feel the weight of history, the presence of God. But they walk over a conquest far more brutal than any battle. A secret the church buried not just in forgotten texts, but in the very earth beneath their feet. The air in this subterranean chamber is thick with the scent of damp soil and forgotten things, a metallic tang of iron in the chill. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. But imagine the metallic taste of fear, the cold sweat on your brow, the damp stone against your back, as you etch a symbol that could be your undoing. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. They crafted secret codes within the curves of calligraphy, embedded hidden astronomical diagrams into seemingly innocent cathedral carvings, and passed on ancient medical remedies veiled as innocuous folklore. Every rustle of a hidden scroll, every seemingly insignificant symbol, held a universe of threatened wisdom. This clandestine sharing system, a medieval dark web, ensured that humanity's greatest achievements, scientific, philosophical, medical, survived the church's intellectual monopoly. It's a mirror to our own time, isn't it? The same urgent need to bypass official gatekeepers for truth, whether through encrypted messages or anonymous forums. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This isn't the history they taught you in school. This is the secret history, etched into forgotten corners and whispered between trusted souls. How did humanity hold on to its vital truths when the very act of seeking knowledge could mean the pyre? Beyond the formal schools, beyond the gilded monasteries, networks of scribes, healers, and stonemasons wove an invisible web. They buried the future in plain sight. What 99% of people never learn about the Middle Ages isn't just how they died, but how they truly lived, and how forbidden knowledge was kept alive against all odds. The air bites, thick with damp earth and wood smoke. Your breath mists a fragile ghost against the vast, echoing silence of a world without books, without easy answers. Outside, the bells toll the vespers, a mournful dirge that punctuates the suffocating grip of an empire built on blind faith. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, Hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Imagine the bitter taste of forced choices, a young woman's tears shed silently over a political match that dictates her entire existence. This isn't about two souls uniting. It's about property transfer, lineage consolidation, and the cold, calculated expansion of influence. You are merely a vessel, a pawn in a larger game. This social engineering, masked by religious doctrine and tradition, parallels how modern institutions continue to exert control over personal lives through economic incentives, social pressures, or even reproductive rights, making you question the true motivations behind many societal norms even today. You can feel the rough wool of your gown against your skin, a scratchy reminder of your new reality. The wet sound of rotting thatch dripping outside is a mournful rhythm to the rapid pulse in your ears. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But this isn't the story of knights and princesses you think you know. 99% of the romance depicted is a deliberate, beautiful lie. Here, marriage isn't born of affection. It's forged in the crucible of power, wealth, and alliances. For centuries, historians have buried the secret of medieval marriage, a silent conspiracy that still whispers in our modern lives. What they don't want you to know is that love was a myth, carefully constructed to hide a truth far more brutal. The candle gutters, a struggling breath in the suffocating silence. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights, each one ending in a chilling contract. The air hangs heavy with damp earth and something else, a metallic taste of fear, clinging to the back of your tongue. What other conspiracies lie hidden just beneath the surface of the history you thought you knew? The rhythmic drip, drip, drip of condensation from the old stone ceiling, a sound both mournful and insistent, seems to echo the slow, deliberate march of truth, always finding its way through the cracks. It leaves you wondering, what truths are being buried in our own time, waiting for a future hand to uncover them? A single illuminated letter in a forgotten manuscript, a serpent coiling around a tree of knowledge, glows faintly in the deepening shadows, a defiant testament to quiet courage across centuries. The central mystery of the forbidden libraries wasn't just what they contained, but how they survived, passed down by a silent lineage of intellectual rebels. These monks, cloaked in piety, were the true guardians of dangerous truths, ensuring that a flicker of critical thought persisted through the long, dark night of medieval dogmatism. This quiet, persistent defiance teaches us that the human hunger for knowledge, for a truth beyond imposed narratives, is an unquenchable fire. It teaches us that even in the most controlled environments, the individual spirit finds ways to question, to challenge, to record. What they don't want you to know is that many of the core ideas of individual faith and direct connection to the divine were nurtured not by radical preachers, but by quiet, scholarly monks risking their lives in the shadows of their own monasteries. The light of dawn, pale and anemic, begins to filter through the scriptorium's high windows, painting the dust motes in the air. The secret texts, now carefully rehidden, sleep in their false-bottomed chest. waiting for the next brave hand to uncover them. This was the true core of the forbidden texts, not just paganism, but a radical empowerment of the individual soul that directly undermined the Church's necessity. He would bury this secret with painstaking care, using false bottoms in chests, coded marginalia, and the silent conspiracy of like-minded brethren. The faint, almost imperceptible click of the secret latch on the original manuscript's binding is the only sound as he carefully closes it. The knowledge contained within these pages, the intellectual rebellion that spanned generations of monks, eventually led to the quiet revolution that paved the way for the Reformation centuries later. A truly horrifying statistic. For centuries, the Church wielded its power so absolutely that even questioning a single dogma could lead to a slow, agonizing death by torture, followed by the burning of your soul in hellfire. This, they wanted you to believe, was your destiny for dissent. He pushes the fear down, deep into the pit of his stomach. His gaze falls on a specific passage, a meditation on the divine spark within every individual, unmediated by priests or sacraments. Thomas lets out a shuddering breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He glances down at the text, the ancient wisdom promising a world beyond the Church's monolithic power, a direct line to divinity that terrified those who held earthly dominion. These pages spoke of lost wisdom, of a cosmology where man held an intrinsic power, not merely bestowed by the Church. This shattering assumption that spiritual authority could exist outside of clerical control was the ultimate heresy. He remembers the fate of the Kafirs, branded heretics, wiped from the face of the earth. He knows what happens to those who challenge the narrative. The creak again, closer this time, accompanied by a faint shuffling sound. Thomas's breath hitches. He can feel the cold sweat prickling his scalp. The false bottom of his chest, where he keeps his finished copies, seems impossibly far away. He has only seconds. Will he be caught with the evidence of his secret life laid bare? The shuffling fades. Silence returns, heavy and suffocating. His heart thunders against his ribs, a frantic drum against the silence. Is it Brother Superior? Or perhaps the master of the novices, who possesses eyes that see too much, too often? He glances wildly at the unfinished page, the forbidden words mocking him. He knows, with an icy certainty, that these hidden libraries, full of pagan philosophies and radical theological interpretations, represent not just a challenge to papal authority, but a direct threat to its very existence. A sudden gust of wind rattles the leaded panes of the window, making the candle flame dance precariously. This hidden intellectual rebellion mirrors modern-day digital archives or leaked government documents, where individuals risk everything to preserve and disseminate information deemed dangerous by those in power, ensuring truths survive suppression. The flickering candlelight dances, casting grotesque shadows that seem to watch from every corner of the vast, echoing room. You swear you hear the wet sound of rotting thatch dripping somewhere above, a reminder of the relentless decay that encroaches on all things, even secrets. A floorboard creaks in the hallway outside. Thomas freezes, quills suspended in mid-air. He had learned to read the coded marginalia, subtle symbols etched into the borders of official texts, breadcrumbs leading to the hidden library he now risked his soul for. Imagine being 12 years old, promised to God, and this is your reality. A life of devotion punctuated by the terrifying thrill of intellectual heresy. The stakes were absolute. Excommunication was not just a spiritual banishment, it was a social death sentence, leaving you vulnerable to any cruelty, any persecution. Yet he copies the original volume, an ancient brittle thing with a false bottom in its carved wooden cover, lies open beside Thomas's meticulous copy. He had discovered it years ago, tucked away in a forgotten alcove, hidden behind a loose flagstone beneath his own cell's bed, placed there by a brother long since dead or disappeared. The weight of that discovery had never left him, a constant metallic taste of fear at the back of his tongue. Thomas leans closer, his breath ghosting over the page, each careful stroke of the quill adding another word to a manuscript that could damn him to hell, or worse, to the torturer's rack. This is a text of Hermes Trismegistus, a pagan philosopher, intertwined with radical theological interpretations of Scripture that dared to question the infallibility of the Pope, speaking of a direct, unmediated path to God, bypassing the entire ecclesiastical hierarchy. 99% of people never learn this. The Church's iron grip on information was constantly challenged from within, often by the very men sworn to uphold it. What they don't want you to know is that many monasteries were not just bastions of piety, but clandestine vaults for intellectual defiance, where monks risked everything to preserve ideas deemed dangerous by Rome. This isn't the pious copying of psalms. This is an act of treason, a feverish, silent rebellion against the ultimate authority. You feel the glacial bite of the night air seeping through the unmortared stones of the monastery wall, tightening the skin across your knuckles. The scent of old parchment, stale oil, and the ever-present damp earth fills your nostrils. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The rhythmic scrape of a quill against vellum carves the only sound in the scriptorium, a low, rasping whisper that could be mistaken for a rat in the dark. Brother Thomas's fingers ache, calloused and ink-stained, but his gaze, illuminated by a single flickering beeswax candle, never leaves the forbidden text before him. This isn't just history. It's a story of ultimate risk, intellectual rebellion, and the terrifying power of forbidden knowledge, buried deep within cold stone and human hearts. The secrets hidden here didn't just challenge authority. They threatened to unravel the very fabric of existence. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where unseen forces hold sway, and knowledge is both salvation and damnation. Feel the damp chill seep into your bones. Hear the distant, mournful chime of a bell, marking the midnight hour. What if the very pillars of your faith, the words you cling to for salvation, were built upon a carefully constructed lie? What if the men entrusted with spiritual enlightenment were, in the dark hours, betraying everything they swore to uphold? The candle gutters. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights. But this night holds a truth more dangerous than any demon. 99% of people don't know about the secret lives of monks who, despite strict vows, harbored forbidden texts within monastery walls. The Church buried this secret for centuries, but the parchment, cold and thin as skin, whispered its truth into the silence. You can taste the metallic tang of fear in the air. A faint echo of the terror that gripped these men. You've never seen a toothbrush. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. What terrifying, beautiful secrets did they truly uncover within the sacred vessels of the human form? Secrets whispered in the shadows, secrets that quietly laid the groundwork for the world you live in today. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. A forbidden incision, a silent, desperate prayer for forgiveness, and a burning hope that understanding the dead might, just might, save the living. This wasn't just science, it was heresy, a direct challenge to a power that could crush you like a worm, brand you a sorcerer, condemn you to the pyre and eternal damnation. What drove these hidden practitioners to risk everything? Their lives, their souls, their very memory. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. For centuries, 99% of medical students are taught a sanitized history, a comforting fable overlooking these illicit acts of courage. They paint a picture of ignorance, of prayers without progress, where the human body was a mystery never to be probed. But imagine, for a moment, the tremor in a hand holding a crude, sharpened blade over skin that, according to the Church, belongs solely to God, not to man. This isn't just a body, it's a soul, and you are desecrating it. The air bites, not just with winter's chill, but with the cloying, sweet, sick smell of rotting flesh, thinly masked by the acrid smoke of burning herbs, rosemary, frankincense, desperate attempts to purify the unspeakable. A single frantic breath catches in your throat, tasting of metallic fear and the stale, damp earth of the grave. The wet sound of snow melting from the roof drips somewhere outside. Each drop a tiny hammer against the suffocating silence of your clandestine chamber. Fingernails scrape against rough stone as you steady yourself. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. The Church buried a secret so dark, so defiant of God's will, it could erase a man from history, his very name struck from every scroll. What they don't want you to know is that beneath the cowl of pious physicians, in the very heart of the Middle Ages, a dangerous game of discovery was played, with the human body itself serving as the ultimate forbidden text. 99% of people have no idea. The candle gutters, a gasp of dwindling light. Its dying flame throws your shadow long and grotesque against stone walls slick with a creeping damp. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. What they don't want you to know is that we've been robbed of more than just time. We've been robbed of our past, of the true ingenuity of our ancestors. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. This discovery contradicts centuries of official history, mocking the very idea of a dark age, igniting a furious spark of doubt about everything you thought you knew. The Church itself, it seems, held secrets, burying not just bodies, but entire branches of human innovation within the consecrated grounds of abandoned monastic lands. This deliberate suppression of technological advancement echoes how modern corporations sometimes hide patents or innovations that threaten their established markets, making you wonder how much true human progress has been deliberately stalled throughout history. But what if the very soil you walk on holds secrets of advanced engineering, of astronomical wisdom, of water management systems so sophisticated they defy the crude narratives we've been fed? Imagine the grit of ancient dirt clinging to your hands, the scrape of your trowel against something impossibly smooth, perfectly circular, embedded deep within the monastic ruins. An artifact that shouldn't exist. A precision-cut gear mechanism, perhaps, or a segment of an intricate celestial device, far more complex than anything official records suggest. It feels cold, smooth, alien, whispering of a forgotten brilliance. A soft breeze carries the whisper of unseen leaves and the distant, wet sound of rotting thatch dripping from an unseen roof adds to the primal symphony. You run your palm over the rough, lichen-dusted stone of a collapsed wall, feeling the history etched into its cold, silent face. This isn't the history they taught you in school. This is the history they hid. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. They told you the Dark Ages were primitive, barbaric. But the truth is, an entire civilization's worth of advanced knowledge was deliberately buried, and 99% of historians refuse to acknowledge what archaeologists are now unearthing. The damp chill of the earth seeps into your bones, not from the ancient air, but from the raw, exposed soil beneath your fingernails. The metallic tang of rust mixes with the earthy scent of decay, hinting at what lies just below the surface. The official records whisper of pious villagers and dutiful serfs, but the wind through the forgotten alleyways still carries the scent of illicit spices, the metallic clink of untaxed coins, and the desperate whisper of a deal struck under the unblinking eye of the moon. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The secret is that they won. They survived, and in doing so, they left us a haunting echo that freedom, even in its most basic form, has always been an underground commodity. Every furtive glance, every hushed negotiation, every rustle of smuggled goods was a tiny act of rebellion, a testament to the fact that people will always find a way when systems fail them. Their lives, dismissed as sinful, were in fact heroic, daily battles against a world designed to crush them. The truth about medieval survival is that it was rarely achieved by adherence to official decrees. It was achieved in the murky depths of shadow economies, in the shared understanding between the desperate, in the quiet, defiant exchanges that kept the light of life flickering. It reveals how power structures across centuries demonize any system that undermines their control, whether it's medieval peasants trading grain or modern citizens seeking decentralized information. The black markets weren't just a workaround. They were a living, breathing challenge to the very idea of absolute authority. They were where lost wisdom was rediscovered, where forgotten medicines cured ills the church declared divine punishment, where suppressed innovations found their way into common hands. You move, your footsteps barely a whisper on the damp cobbles, the heavy sack a precious burden against your chest. The metallic taste of fear still lingers, but it's now mixed with a strange, potent sense of triumph. You defied the system, again. You bypassed the levies, the prohibitions, the excommunications that would have left your children hungry. This underground economy, condemned from every pulpit and gallows, was the purest expression of human will to survive. A testament to ingenuity against impossible odds. This is the constant knife edge of existence. Every illicit deal a gamble, every shadow a potential informer. The secret, 99% of people never learn, is that these illegal markets weren't just tolerated by some. They were often sanctioned by lesser lords or corrupt church officials who secretly benefited, creating a web of hypocrisy that spanned from the poorest peasant to the wealthiest prelate. The true forbidden knowledge lies not in the act of trade, but in the institutional rot it exposed. As the door closes with a soft thud, plunging you back into the complete, suffocating darkness, a new chill snakes down your spine, not from the cold, but from the sudden, sharp awareness of the figure standing at the far end of the alley, motionless, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of a distant street lamp. He's been there, watching, and he's not moving. The figure at the alley's end remains, a silhouette against the city's sparse, flickering light. A silent question mark in the oppressive medieval night. They were the encrypted communications of their time, bypassing an oppressive state and a monopolizing church to provide vital services. Just as modern whistleblowers operate outside official channels to reveal truth, these clandestine networks expose the gaping holes in the official narrative of order and justice. They were demonized, yes, but for many, they were the only bridge between life and death. You feel the rough edges of the sack, the hard kernels within. A promise of warmth in a cold world. You hear the metallic clink of coins before they vanish. A moment later, a rough sack is pressed into your arms. It's heavy, wonderfully heavy. The texture of the coarse cloth against your hands is strangely comforting. Inside, you know, are the grains you need to grind, the meager sustenance that will keep your family from starvation for another week. What they don't teach you is that these sinful, black markets were the true backbone of the medieval economy for common folk. A slit of yellowish light widens, revealing a sliver of a face, gaunt and shadowed, eyes darting, assessing. The air shifts, carrying a new scent, a faint, earthy aroma of fresh bread, mixed with something else, a hint of something illicit, perhaps a rare spice or a forbidden medicinal herb. The usual? The voice is a low, guttural whisper, barely audible above the scritch-scratch of rats scrambling in the eaves. You nod, unable to speak, your throat tight. The hand that emerges from the darkness is calloused, its fingers quick as it accepts your pouch. 99% of what you consume, from the grain that makes your meager bread to the herbs that keep the fever from taking your youngest, passes through these unseen channels. This isn't a choice for convenience. It's the stark reality of existence when legal markets, choked by a ruthless feudal system, and the church's insatiable hunger for tithes, routinely fail. Historians have hidden this for centuries, painting a picture of orderly commerce, when the truth was a chaotic, clandestine dance of survival. A faint rasp, almost imperceptible over the distant braying of a donkey, signals the door opening. A single, unseen drip of water echoes from somewhere deeper in the darkness, a wet, rhythmic sound that amplifies the frantic thumping of your own heart. Your fingers, stiff with cold, clench around the small, heavy pouch hidden beneath your tunic. You trace the rough stitching of the coin purse, the few silver pennies within, feeling like a king's ransom, yet barely enough for tonight's desperate errand. You stand by a sagging wooden door, the wood warped and splintered. Waiting. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The thing about medieval justice is it rarely applied to those who truly held power, leaving you only one recourse: the hidden paths. Tonight, the alley itself is a wound in the city's side, smelling of stale urine and rotting refuse. It's where your neighbors find bread, where forbidden remedies save lives, where knowledge slips past the censors like a thief in the night. This isn't just about illicit goods. It's about the very breath in your lungs, the warmth in your child's bed. It's the secret language of survival, a silent rebellion against a system designed to keep you powerless. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The cobblestones beneath your worn boots are slick with ancient grime, reflecting the struggling light of a single sputtering lantern. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Official markets are empty, picked clean by taxes and the greedy hands of the church's monopolies, leaving nothing but dust and exorbitant prices for a starving populace. But there's another market, a network unseen, unheard, thriving in the shadows, where the true currency is desperation and cunning. 99% of what you've learned about medieval markets is a carefully constructed lie designed to obscure the truth. What they don't want you to know is that your very survival depends on breaking every law. The air itself bites, a raw, damp chill that sinks into your bones, carrying the acrid scent of 1,000 unwashed bodies and the distant, unsettling clang of the blacksmith's hammer. You pull the threadbare wool tighter, but the cold still finds its way through. Your stomach rumbles, a hollow, insistent ache that has been your constant companion since sunrise. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. And what hidden techniques did they employ that are still echoed in the fear-driven narratives of our own world today, making you question every narrative you're fed? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin. And live the life they never got to finish. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But this is not the history of kings and queens you learned. This is the true history of your fear. They didn't just tell you about hell. They made you feel its heat, smell its sulfur, hear the screams of the damned, transforming abstract theology into a visceral, terrifying reality. But how did they achieve such total, absolute control over the minds and bodies of entire populations? Your breath catches, a shallow gasp in the chill. Above you, in murals smeared with pigments the color of dried blood, a demon with eyes of fire tears souls limb from limb. The painter's brushstrokes aren't just art. They're an incision into your very soul, an ASMR of terror designed to resonate in your marrow. You hear the wet sound of rotting thatch dripping outside, a constant, unsettling rhythm. Every sermon delivered from the pulpit isn't just a lesson, it's a performance, making the crackling flames of purgatory so real you can almost feel their heat scorch your skin. 99% of people believe medieval fear was organic, a simple byproduct of a harsh, brutal world. They're wrong. What they don't want you to know is that terror was a weapon, meticulously crafted and wielded by unseen hands to forge obedience from chaos. The Church buried this secret for 800 years, until archaeologists in 2019 unearthed not just bones, but the chilling evidence of how truly sophisticated this emotional engineering was. The air in the chapel is thick, not with the clean scent of incense, but with the cloying sweetness of rot and the metallic tang of unacknowledged dread. You're about to uncover what foundational stories are truly built on selective truths, and once seen, these truths cannot be unseen. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages, but not the version they taught you. This is the age where spiritual truth became a weapon, where absolute control over the narrative was the ultimate prize. What if community, not dogma, was central to early followers? What if women held undeniable spiritual authority, a power brutally stripped away? This wasn't about faith. It was about orchestrating a medieval cover-up so complete it ensured the powerful would reign supreme, echoing modern efforts to sanitize history and control our understanding of the world. Imagine the musty, metallic tang of fear clinging to the air as a hidden hand slides open a heavy wooden chest in the silent, cold stone chambers beneath a towering cathedral. The flickering candlelight from a single wick barely illuminates pages brittle with age, the parchment whispering forgotten truths, as if the very air remembers the scribes who penned forbidden knowledge. Your shadow dances against walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights, a spectral echo of the secrets they held. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. 99% of what you believe about early Christianity is a lie, a carefully curated narrative designed to erase a truth so profound it would shatter the very foundations of power. They've buried this secret deep within the Church's most secure vaults, not in forgotten graves, but in the brittle leaves of ancient texts. A radically different Jesus, a more human, philosophical figure whose teachings empowered women and directly challenged the nascent hierarchy. And what will you do when forced to choose between loyalty to the one who saved you and the terrifying power of the Holy Inquisition? The Inquisitor, Father Thomas, a man known for his relentless pursuit of heresy, has just arrived in the next village, his eyes keen for any deviation, any whisper of unholy healing. He has heard tales of a sudden, inexplicable recovery in your village, a recovery far too swift for God's divine will alone. And Alara, the woman who saved you, she is already packing her meager herbs, her gaze distant and worried, her hands trembling slightly. What will happen when the Church's brutal reach finally finds the one who defied death itself? They understood antiseptics from certain plants, recognized the need for hygiene in wounds, and even performed minor surgeries that were often more successful than those sanctioned by the official, bloodletting-focused physicians of the day. This shatters the assumption that medieval medicine was all primitive. It wasn't primitive, it was suppressed. As the fever breaks and the painful swellings begin to recede, a new, chilling dread descends. You are alive, but your survival is a testament to Alara's forbidden knowledge, but dangerous secret in a world where ignorance is enforced. How many natural, cheaper remedies are suppressed by modern pharmaceutical companies, deemed unscientific or unproven, because they can't be patented and profit from? Imagine the countless lives lost, not to disease itself, but to the deliberate burying of knowledge for the sake of power and coin. The whispers from those empty medieval rooms echo, a haunting parallel in the boardrooms of today. The fact is, many of these witches were skilled practitioners. Their knowledge, passed down through generations, quietly defied the official narrative and saved thousands. It threatened their entire monopoly, both spiritual and temporal. The deliberate suppression of this ancient wisdom was not merely superstition. It was a calculated act of power. They called it witchcraft, a convenient label to eliminate competitors and maintain control over the hearts and minds of the desperate. Your breath hitches. You taste the metallic tang of fear, but also a flicker of hope as Alara's cool, strong brew touches your lips, the strange taste spreading across your tongue. This isn't so different from today. Archaeologists unearthing secret caches in forgotten medieval villages in 2019 found the residue of this very blend, a powerful antibiotic, effective even against early stages of plague. This is the secret 99% of people never learn, that while the church burned women for witchcraft, those women were often practicing sophisticated herbal medicine, centuries ahead of their time. The church's power was absolute, their doctrine the only truth. A direct challenge to their spiritual authority, such as a herbal remedy proving more effective than prayer, was heresy. It undermined their control over life and death, over hope and fear. Alara's cottage smells of dried herbs, wood smoke, and something else, a sharp, earthy scent that cuts through the despair. You hear the faint thump-thump of a mortar and pestle from the next room, a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound. Her hands, gnarled and stained, move with a precision that belies their age. She doesn't speak of God's will, she speaks of plants, willow bark for fever, wild garlic for infection, and a specific, dark, leafy concoction, bitter and potent. Desperate, your father slips out into the moonless night, a single silver coin clutched in his sweaty palm. He is seeking a whisper, a rumor, a name spoken only in hushed tones behind bolted doors. Old Alara. They call her a witch. The church preaches that such women consort with devils, that their remedies are the work of evil. But you, lying on a straw pallet, watching the candle gutter, know that the blessed water has done nothing. You feel the dull ache behind your eyes, the heavy thrumming in your veins, the damp chill of impending demise. The village priest has blessed you, recited the litany for the dying, but the black buboes on your groin throb with an agonizing rhythm, mocking his prayers. You hear your mother's hushed sobs from the corner, her fingernails scraping against the rough stone wall as she tries to tear her own hair in despair. Death is a familiar shadow in this age. 97% of medieval children never lived to see their 5th birthday, and you, an adult, now feel its cold breath on your neck. You are sinking. What they don't want you to know about medieval plagues isn't that they were God's wrath, but that some brave souls found a way to fight back, a secret buried for centuries by those who feared knowledge more than death. You cough, the wet, rasping sound tearing at your throat, each breath a searing pain. The stench of sweat and fear hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of sickness. Your skin crawls as the fever takes hold, painting your vision with swirling shadows. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. These are records of texts deemed heretical, not for blasphemy, but for dangerous truths about medicine, astronomy, and even the Church's own origins. This wasn't merely censorship. It was a deliberate, institutional effort to rewrite history, to control the minds of the masses. Much like how modern governments craft narratives and fact-check to silence dissent. 3 people knew the full extent of this secret library's contents. 2 died mysteriously before the collection was supposedly purified. By the end, you'll never trust medieval history again. What else are they hiding from us today? Fingernails scrape against rough-hewn shelves, brushing ancient vellum. It scent a mix of dust, parchment, and something else. Something vital, like blood. This isn't a library. It's a vault of crimes. A chilling whisper, echoing through a monastery's catacombs. A place where forbidden knowledge, carefully excised from history, still breathes. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. What they don't want you to know is that these aren't just old books. 99% of people believe medieval peasants were stupid, blindly accepting fate during the Black Death, clinging to superstitions. But the truth isn't about their ignorance. It's about what was deliberately hidden from them and from you. The candle gutters, a lonely, defiant spark against the swallowing dark. Your shadow dances, a monstrous doppelganger against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights, the 1,000 desperate secrets. You taste the metallic tang of fear, not of ghosts, but of forbidden knowledge.